May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord. From back in the day, when social media first changed the way forever that we communicate, two posts stick in my memory. One, some people are so poor, all they have is money. And the second, comfort breeds complacency. Wealth and luxury breeds indifference. Power and position breeds arrogance. Some of these aspects may have been our own experiences. It takes a concerted effort to stay grounded and humble under these conditions. Today's readings, my dear sisters and brothers, weave together these themes of comfort, wealth, and status, beginning with Prophet Amos. His message to Israel then remains relevant even today. Amos addresses directly the wealthy and complacent who, in the lap of their comfort, together with their leaders, fail to see the spiritual and moral decay around them and they ignore the suffering and the injustice done to their brothers. Our very own late Pope Francis constantly reminded us of the scandal of poverty against the poor and our duty towards the poor, he himself living by example. The question remains though, do we recognize injustice around us, or do we too look away? You know, in the early 80s, our parishes were separated east from the west, and we in the east had a new church structure. We prided ourselves in being the church where God lived on the first floor. It was truly a sight, a church building literally in the heart of slums. We cared tremendously for our downtrodden brethren. Now, 44 years later, as the surrounding landscape has changed, so have we. We've become complacent, indifferent, and immune to the sight of poverty around us. According to the World Bank, a quarter of the world lives in poverty. And half of that, my sisters and brothers, lives in our very own backyards. We have grown immune and steeled ourselves against the sight of poverty, just like the rich man does in today's thought-provoking, profound Gospel of Luke chapter 16. We're all too familiar with this parable, aren't we? This parable is unique as the only parable in the Gospels where a character is given a name. What's in a name, we so casually say, right? Lazarus, from the Hebrew Eleazar, meaning God has helped, was overlooked by everyone around him. Even the rich man knew Lazarus by name, yet still ignored his suffering. But God saw Lazarus. He had a special connection with him. Interestingly, the rich man continues to remain unnamed. Perhaps to draw a parallel, as Father showed us even earlier, perhaps to draw a parallel between the raising of Lazarus from the dead and a transition to the afterlife. talking of the afterlife. Death is a leveling ground, isn't it? COVID, we may recall, made that painfully clear for us. It did not target its victim according to age, gender, shape, size, color, designation, expertise, experience, occupation, and what have you. Even in death, the obnoxious arrogance and audacity of the rich man is shocking when he asks Abraham to send Lazarus to serve him as what? As a slave. His indifference in expecting to be served even in Hades reveals how disconnected the rich man was from God. Abraham's apt response, that a great chasm, an uncrossable chasm, separates them. The fires of hell were the rich man's new permanent address. And nothing he or us will we be able to do once we have breathed our last. The rich man's fate was sealed. Why? Because he failed to use his blessings, his wealth, to alleviate the suffering of the poor around him while still alive. His was a sin of omission. Wealth itself is morally neutral. It is love of riches that is the root of all evil, especially when it feeds greed instead of lifting those in need of the basic necessities for a dignified life. It pulls the heart away from the love of God and neighbor. Even the Catechism drums this, and among several paragraphs in CCC 2145 we read, those who are wealthy must be urged to be detached from riches and to stay focused on using their wealth for the good of others. And if I may add, without making a tom-tom about it. In our second reading of Paul's letter to young Timothy, leader of the church in Ephesus, a city that had become the hotbed of false teachings and doctrinal confusion, Paul urges Timothy to be faithful, to live godly lives, to teach the faith, to fight the good fight of faith. And under his leadership, which is not about authority, but one of service, to continue to serve those in need versus enabling those who do not genuinely require assistance. Godly lives, my dear sisters and brothers, can come about by putting our trust in God and focusing on Christ, the eternal hope, and not on the fleeting pleasures of this world. Today's readings, my dear sisters and brothers, shakes us from our complacency, our arrogance, our indifference. For we do not have time in this short mortal life we live. How are we living? Are we living godly lives? How much money is enough money? I am reminded of Blessed Pope John Paul I, who today, in 1978, died after a very short 33 days of papacy. He, in his initial address, spoke of his predecessor, now Saint Pope Paul VI, that he showed us how to love, how to serve, how to labor, and even suffer for the Church of Christ. may we be known by these same qualities and be welcomed into eternity by the archangels whose feast we celebrate tomorrow, and the heavenly host of angels and saints, into the bosom of the loving arms of our just God, like Lazarus. Amen.